In this pod, we'll gain an overview of what production is and what businesses need to think about during production.
For businesses to succeed, they have to sell something. This can be goods or services. Goods are physical products that you can buy and hold in your hands, such as food, clothes, a smartphone, and so on. Services, on the other hand, are things you buy to experience, like a haircut, a trip to the cinema, or music lessons. In fact, you're using a service right now watching this pod. An easy way to remember is that goods can be sold on, whereas a service usually can't. You can sell your old phone to someone else when you want to buy a new one. But you can't do the same with your old haircut. Goods are made, whereas a service is something that's provided.
So where does production fit in with this? A business like Argos doesn't really make any products. They buy products from other producers and sell them on to customers. This means they don't produce their own goods. Other businesses make the products themselves, and some do both. An example is Tesco. Lots of products they sell are bought straight from other businesses, but some are produced by Tesco themselves. If you go into Tesco, you'll likely see more than one type of ketchup for sale. One is Heinz, and one is Tesco's own brand. When a business makes something, this is called production.
Production normally refers to making physical goods, not services. There are lots of ways of producing goods, but they fall into two main categories. These are capital intensive and labour intensive. The word capital means different things in different business contexts, but the term labour is always to do with workers.
So, labour intensive is to do with employees who work for the company. It means that when a business produces goods, it uses lots of employees. A capital intensive approach is the opposite. Fewer employees are used, but more machinery. There isn't one correct approach. Each business decides the right approach for them based on things like cost, quality, or flexibility. But the success of a business relies on it managing all of its resources, whether this is employees, finances, or physical resources.
For example, if you were a new business, you might not have much finance available. You wouldn't be able to afford much machinery, so you would choose labour intensive. This can be great, as employees can be quite flexible and you can change their jobs from day to day. But an established business that needs to produce as many products as possible would choose instead to use more machinery. Machines can work 24/7. They can work much quicker and don't need breaks or holidays. On the other hand, though, buying machinery is more expensive in the short term and less flexible than employees. Plus, if the machines break, your production stops.
Think about all the processes that go into making a packet of crisps. First, do you have the physical resources required? Do you have enough potatoes, a knife, something to fry them in? Essentially, do you have the items and space required to make them? Then think about how long would it take you to do every single process, from cleaning and slicing potatoes to cooking to creating packaging or any of the other things in between.
Individually, it could take hours to create one product, whereas a capital-intensive factory will churn out thousands of packets every single hour. But again, you're going to need the physical resources of space for the large machinery too, so always be aware that these things go hand in hand.
Both capital intensive and labor intensive are examples of production, but the factory example is much more productive than making crisps by hand. So, what's the difference between production and productivity? Productivity is about how much you're producing. The more you can produce, the more productive you are. So, the factory would be much more efficient and productive at making crisps than someone doing it by hand at home.
There are lots of ways to measure productivity, but essentially, it's total output divided by total input. For example, if it takes 10 employees 10 hours each to make 1,000 bags of crisps, the total inputs are 10 employees multiplied by 10 hours, so 100 hours. The total outputs are 1,000 bags of crisps, so 1,000 divided by 100 would be 10 bags of crisps per hour. The higher the number, the more productive your business is.
But that doesn't mean the most productive way of producing goods is always the best way. Think of recent trends for fashionable hipster businesses. They try and make their product stand out and do things differently. Their unique selling point is that they don't sell mass produced goods. A homemade bag of crisps might take it longer to make, but they might be able to sell it at a much higher price and sell to a higher income target market.
It's always a balancing act when deciding what to produce and how to produce it. Do you focus on cost, quality, flexibility, productivity, or a combination of these? Each business is different and will have their own priorities based on factors like their size or their objectives.